Nelson Mandela, a name that echoes through time, he is a symbol of hope, a beacon of peace. His journey from prisoner to president is a testament to the human spirit's strength. Mandela's story is an inspiration to us all. He fought for equality, he fought against injustice. Mandela endured decades of imprisonment, yet he emerged unbroken. He forgave his oppressors, he led his nation to democracy. Mandela's life teaches us the power of resilience. Nelson Mandela was born in a small village called Mveso, nestled in the heart of South Africa. This humble beginning would shape the man who would later become a global icon for justice and equality. He grew up surrounded by the breathtaking beauty of the Transkei region, a place of rolling hills, lush valleys, and a deep sense of community. The natural splendor of his homeland instilled in him a profound love for his country and its people. His childhood was simple, yet rich in the warmth of family and the traditions of his Xhosa heritage. Mandela's family was close-knit, and he was taught the values of respect, hard work, and the importance of community from a young age. But even from a young age, Mandela felt the sting of discrimination. The seeds of his awareness were planted early as he observed the stark inequalities that existed in his society. He saw the injustices of apartheid firsthand. The system of racial segregation was not just a distant policy, it was a daily reality that affected every aspect of life for black South Africans. This system of racial segregation cast a long shadow over South Africa. It was a time of harsh laws and brutal enforcement, where the color of one's skin determined their fate and opportunities. It denied basic rights to black South Africans, relegating them to a life of oppression and limited possibilities. The pass books they were forced to carry were a constant reminder of their second-class status. These injustices fueled Mandela's desire for change. He was determined to fight against the oppressive system that sought to diminish the dignity of his people. He knew he had to act. With a steadfast resolve, Mandela embarked on a journey that would take him from the rural landscapes of his youth to the forefront of a global struggle for freedom and equality. His life became a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and unwavering commitment to justice. Mandela's journey led him to law school. It was here that he began to understand the power of the law and its potential to bring about change. He immersed himself in his studies, driven by a desire to fight the systemic injustices that plagued his country. Mandela believed that through legal means, he could challenge the oppressive structures of apartheid and advocate for the rights of his people. He joined the African National Congress, or ANC. The ANC was a political organization that had been fighting for the rights of black South Africans since its founding in 1912. Mandela saw the ANC as a vehicle through which he could channel his passion for justice and equality. He quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a prominent leader within the organization. This organization shared his goal-ending apartheid. The ANC was committed to dismantling the institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination that defined South African society. Mandela and his fellow activists worked tirelessly to mobilize the masses, educate the public, and build a broad-based movement against apartheid. In the 1940s, the ANC organized peaceful protests. They challenged discriminatory laws. These protests were a powerful statement against the injustices faced by black South Africans. The ANC's strategy was to use non-violent resistance to draw attention to the plight of the oppressed and to demand change from the government. They demanded equality for all South Africans. The protesters carried signs calling for an end to apartheid and chanted slogans of freedom and justice. Their message was clear. They would not rest until every South African, regardless of race, enjoyed equal rights and opportunities. But the government responded with brutality. The apartheid regime saw the ANC's activities as a threat to its power and responded with harsh measures. Peaceful protesters were often met with violent crackdowns by the police, who used batons, tear gas, and even live ammunition to disperse crowds. Peaceful protests were met with violence. The government's heavy-handed tactics only served to highlight the cruelty and injustice of the apartheid system. Images of police attacking unarmed protesters shocked the world and garnered international condemnation. The Sharpeville Massacre in 1960 marked a turning point. On March 21st, 1960, a peaceful protest in the township of Sharpeville turned into a bloodbath when police opened fire on the crowd. The protesters had gathered to demonstrate against the pass laws which required black South Africans to carry passbooks and restricted their movement. Police opened fire on unarmed protesters. The scene was chaotic and horrifying. Men, women, and children ran for their lives as bullets flew through the air. The police showed no mercy, firing indiscriminately into the crowd. Scores of people were killed. The massacre left 69 people dead and over 180 injured. The images of the dead and wounded and the grief-stricken families mourning their loved ones were seared into the collective memory of the nation. This tragedy shook the nation. The Sharpeville Massacre was a wake-up call for many South Africans and the international community. It exposed the brutal reality of apartheid and galvanized support for the anti-apartheid movement. In the wake of the massacre, protests erupted across the country, and the ANC's resolve to fight for justice was strengthened. It pushed Mandela and the ANC to reconsider their methods. The massacre marked a shift in the ANC's strategy. Mandela and his colleagues realized that peaceful protests alone might not be enough to bring about change. They began to explore other forms of resistance, including armed struggle, as they continued their fight against the oppressive apartheid regime. The Sharpeville Massacre was a wake-up call. It showed the world the brutality of apartheid. International condemnation followed. The ANC, under Mandela's leadership, realized that peaceful resistance was not enough. They formed Umkhonto we Sizwe. This was the ANC's armed wing. They targeted symbols of apartheid. They sabotaged government installations. Their goal was to disrupt the regime, not to harm innocent lives. Mandela became a symbol of this resistance. He was a leader who refused to be silenced. Section 5, the road to armed resistance. Mandela knew the risks. He was acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. The path he chose was fraught with peril, but he was undeterred. His commitment to justice and equality was unwavering. He was prepared to sacrifice everything: his family, his freedom, even his life. The struggle against apartheid was not just a political battle, it was a moral imperative. Mandela's resolve was strengthened by the suffering of his people. He was labeled a terrorist by the government. The oppressive regime sought to silence him, branding him an enemy of the state. But Mandela's spirit was unbreakable. He went underground, adopting various disguises to evade capture. He traveled secretly, organizing resistance. Moving from place to place, he met with fellow freedom fighters, strategizing and planning. His clandestine activities were crucial in keeping the movement alive. But in 1964, he was captured. The government finally caught up with him. His arrest was a devastating blow to the movement, but it also galvanized his supporters. He was sentenced to life in prison. The trial was a farce, a mockery of justice. Yet Mandela used the courtroom as a platform to speak out against apartheid, turning his sentencing into a powerful statement. His imprisonment shocked the world. News of his life sentence spread like wildfire, igniting outrage and condemnation. People across the globe were appalled by the injustice. It ignited a global movement for his release. Activists, politicians, and ordinary citizens joined forces, demanding his freedom. The call for Mandela's release became a symbol of the broader struggle against apartheid. Free Nelson Mandela became a rallying cry. The slogan was emblazoned on posters, banners, and T-shirts. It was chanted at protests and rallies, echoing around the world. People from all walks of life demanded his freedom. From students to celebrities, from workers to world leaders, the call for justice transcended borders and backgrounds. They recognized his fight for justice. Mandela's struggle was not just for the people of South Africa, but for oppressed people everywhere. His courage and determination inspired a generation to stand up for what is right. Section 6, 27 years of imprisonment. Mandela's spirit remained unbroken. He endured the harsh conditions of prison. He studied, he read, he wrote, he never lost hope. He became a symbol of resistance. The world rallied behind him. Musicians dedicated songs to him. Artists painted his portrait. Activists organized campaigns for his release. Mandela's imprisonment became a global issue. His name was synonymous with the fight against apartheid. Section 7, a global icon of freedom. The years turned into decades. The world watched and waited. Mandela's imprisonment became a stain on South Africa's conscience. The government faced increasing pressure. Sanctions crippled the economy. International condemnation grew louder. Finally, in 1990, the impossible happened. Nelson Mandela walked free. After 27 years in prison, he was released. The world rejoiced. His release marked a turning point in history. It signaled the beginning of the end of apartheid. Section 8. Walking out of prison into history. Mandela emerged from prison a changed man. He was older, his hair now grey, but his spirit was as strong as ever. He called for peace. He urged reconciliation. He met with his former oppressors. Mandela's message resonated throughout South Africa. He led the negotiations to end apartheid. He worked tirelessly to prevent a bloodbath. His leadership was instrumental in the transition to democracy. Section 9. Leading a nation. In 1994, South Africa held its first free and fair elections. Nelson Mandela, the former prisoner, was elected president. He led with grace and humility. He focused on healing the wounds of the past. Mandela established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This gave victims of apartheid a voice. It allowed perpetrators to confess their crimes. It was a testament to Mandela's belief in forgiveness. He showed the world that a better future was possible. Section 10. A legacy of forgiveness and reconciliation. Nelson Mandela's legacy extends far beyond South Africa. He is a global icon. He taught us the power of forgiveness. He showed us the importance of reconciliation. He inspired us to fight for justice. Mandela's story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure. His journey from prisoner to president is a testament to the human spirit's resilience. Nelson Mandela's legacy will continue to inspire generations to come.